I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name, the season of dreams.
So JUCK over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. Hey, it's JUCK. Appreciate you so much for joining me. You're going to see this background and see this shirt, which is just an accident that I'm wearing this shirt, I swear. And you're going to say, this guy talking about this subject is obviously going to be very biased. And it's true. I'll admit my bias. But I'm also going to talk about this in a very fair way and just report what came out. And what did come out? Well, we all know that Michigan got the notice of allegations from the NCAA. The notice of allegations is what lays out the case. Here's what we got on you. This that we're about to go over is Michigan's response to the NCAA. Yahoo has uncovered a section of it, and they've put out a lot of the details, some of which are pretty juicy and interesting. I don't talk about this case on the show. I think it's boring, and I only want to talk about it when something breaks, and something is broken. So that's why we're going to talk about it. Now, Michigan is alleged to have, Connor Stalions is alleged to have scouted 52 games ahead of time. And that's what the NCAA alleges. 52 games over 21, 22, and 23. Michigan says Stalions was only there one time. 8 times it was a Michigan low-level staffer. And all the rest of those times was family and friends of Connor Stalions. They say that those ones do not constitute a violation of their bylaws. They also say that in many cases, the only evidence that they have is that Connor Stalions himself purchased the ticket. His family just likes Big Ten nooners. That's it. So Michigan thinks the NCAA is grossly overreaching and overcharging. They defend Harbaugh. They defend the staffers. They defend Stalions. And they pretty much claim that this wasn't a big deal. The sign stealing system offered minimal relevance to competition. They also say the NCAA did not credibly prove any of this, and the investigators should be treating it as a minor violation. They claim the NCAA has made numerous factually unsupported infractions. They exaggerate aggravating factors, and they ignore mitigating facts. They request that the NCAA apply common sense and commitment to fairness and treat the case not as a serious level 1 infractions case, but a level 2 standard case. Now, all of college football was told by Michigan folks that it was Ryan Day who was responsible for tipping off the NCAA to what happened here. I saw people that some consider reputable, like Rich Eisen, be outraged that Ohio State's head coach would put the CIA and FBI and Secret Service onto Michigan, commit computer crimes and all sorts of things to get this information. It was Ryan Day. That's what we were told to believe. That's what was in Connor Stalions' documentary. As it turns out, according to this document, the tipster derived from Michigan's own campus. But the NCAA won't give Michigan that person's name. Anonymous tipster who appeared to have worked at the school at least one point. Michigan believes that the confidential leaker was used by the NCAA to produce at least some of the charges in the notice of allegations, something to which it expresses concern. So they use this guy to dig up some dirt. Now, Michigan says they respect this individual's privacy, but they claim the NCAA should not be coming after them unless that person's willing to identify themselves, kind of like a right to face your accuser, so to speak. Unfortunately for Michigan, this isn't a court of law, and they've had a really difficult time comprehending that throughout this entire thing. Do we remember back when Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti was coming after them and punishing them, and they whined about due process over and over and over again? I'm not just talking fans. I'm talking the president of the school, Santo Ono. Due process is a legal term. Punishing a member when you're the Big Ten commissioner is not a court of law. You sign up to take his punishments when you become a member of the conference. As for the NCAA, Michigan is fighting this all the way to the end. They're not going to compromise. They're not copping a plea. They're taking it to the jury. And in this case, the jury is the Division I Committee on Infractions, an independent administrative body charged with deciding infractions in all these cases. The committee has the authority to set the hearings, conduct the hearings, and prescribe the penalties. So they're going to the jury. They're requesting a pre-hearing conference to discuss the origins of the tipster and the role that he had in the charges against the school. They just want to know who the guy is, man. Come on, tell me who it is. We've all been there, right? I swear I won't say anything. Just tell me who it is. Now, unlike most things within the NCAA, this hearing is going to get started like real quick, but it's going to last forever. It's going to drag on forever, which is kind of how this thing's already been. Now, in that notice of allegations, the big document the NCAA sent to Michigan citing their case against them, there were 11 total violations. 6 of those violations were level 1. That's the worst of the worst. The NCAA claims that Michigan failed to monitor. They failed to monitor the football program, and given the severe nature and the multi-year length of the Stallions scheme, the university and several of its coaches are considered repeat offenders, an allegation the school refutes in its response. So they say, no, there are no repeat offenders. They refute it. But we know that they're repeat offenders because Jim Harbaugh himself was suspended along with current head coach Sherrone Moore by Michigan for the first 3 games of the season last year. Those two sat out. That was self-imposed by Michigan for recruiting during the COVID period, which is something different than the Stallions violation, which would make them repeat offenders if they're guilty of the Stallions violations. Right? Right. Michigan was found guilty of the COVID recruiting, often called Burgergate by then, and Michigan was placed on 3 years probation, and Harbaugh received a 4-year show cause for a cheeseburger, right? So if they're found guilty again, that makes them repeat offenders. Now, Michigan does not totally deny the Stallion stuff. They admit to some of it, though they think it's way overblown, and they want to go over all of it with this committee and tell them about the self-imposed penalties that they gave on themselves for what happened. It's cool, guys. We punished ourselves all the way to the national championship. Michigan also claims that investigators have not proven that any coaches were aware of, much less participated in the scheme. That's what they said. Unfortunately, they don't get to decide what's proven. And again, this is not a court of law. Beyond a reasonable doubt is not the bar here. But let's get to some of the juicy details from what Yahoo just dug up. One of the bombshells from the original story was that Sherrone Moore, the head coach of Michigan, deleted 52 messages between himself and Connor Stallions the day the initial story broke. What did Sherrone Moore have to say about why he deleted those text messages? Quote, "So I deleted all the information, all Connor, on my personal phone. And it wasn't to hide anything. It was just that I was just extremely angry, the type of person that would do this to the program and these kids." Now, whether or not you believe that's why he deleted those text messages, I agree with his sentiment. He was extremely angry. What type of person would do this to the program they proclaim to love? Put them in jeopardy. And that right there, what Moore said, the way that Michigan in general embraced this guy did them no favors in public opinion, did them no favors with the NCAA. They refer to him as a legend in some sections of Michigan fandom. That's what their own head coach had to say about that guy. He put their national championship at risk. He put everything at risk. And in many people's eyes, tarnished the reputation of everything they achieved that year so that he could be a hero in his own mind. Like, that's what this guy's motive was. And it's clear from some of these text messages we're about to read just how important and cool he thinks he is. Now, the university said that the Sherrone Moore messages were innocuous and not related to the investigation. And we do know that he turned his phone over, and some of those messages were related to the stealing of the signs. But Michigan also states that these could have been related to stealing signs legally. Let's go over some of those messages. Stallions describes needing time to meet with Sherrone Moore to discuss, quote, "a juicy report for you on CSU," as in Colorado State, who Michigan opened the season with last year. Michigan won 51-7. Now, a juicy report on CSU, as if Sherrone Moore needed a juicy sign stealing report on Colorado State. Like, that's just, this guy thinks he's so awesome. In October 22, Stallion sent Moore a single text about Michigan State's blitzing signals, rules, and tendencies. In November 22, A text from Stallions suggests to Moore that Michigan should change its signals ahead of the Ohio State game. Sherrod Moore responded, "I'll think about it." Now, I don't know about you, but when I see that response, it kind of comes off to me like, whatever, dork. That's just how it reads to me. Further in that same message, Stallions said, quote, "Nebraska is screwed." The article states a reference to the fact that he could easily decipher the Huskers' signals ahead of the game between Michigan and Nebraska. Michigan won that game 34-3, and Sherrod Moore told university officials that Nebraska used wristbands, so there were no signals to steal. Yahoo says, perhaps the most interesting text came in April of 2023. Stallions sent a note to Moore that Central Michigan assistant Jake Costner planned to visit the Michigan facility to meet Sherrod Moore. Central Michigan opened the 2023 season with Michigan State, which UM regularly played. Ironically enough, Stallions is believed to have attended the game, Central Michigan versus Michigan State, while in disguise. In fact, Central Michigan University fired Costner last fall as the NCAA investigated the matter of Stallions' alleged appearance on the sidelines of the game. So the guy that got him into the game at Central Michigan to wear the disguise on the sideline, allegedly, came to Michigan, or Stallions said to Moore that he was coming to Michigan to meet with Moore. A handwritten note was found on Stallions' desk and was included as a reference to the plan for the Ohio State game in 2023 that states, among other things, quote, "Been focusing on them all year, plus watching every TV copy, plus Skycam." The university contends that this supports that much of Stallions' sign stealing system came through legal avenues and not in-person scouting. Let's read again what he said. Focusing on them all year, plus watching every TV copy, legal, plus Skycam, legal. So watching them on every TV copy and Skycam, what is focusing on them all year? I would assume that means the illegal stuff, but you never know. They use that to support their claim that everything's legal. Michigan also claims that players and staff members only used Stallions signal boards on a limited basis, and they did not provide a competitive impact. Quote, Michigan players used pre-snap calls of birds for a pass and rabbits for a run even before Stallions joined the staff. Birds and rabbits. They often determine this not based on signals, but by offensive linemen's stances and formations and other tells. Nothing new there. We've been doing that forever in football. Now, Michigan is accused of failing to monitor, and they refute that they failed to monitor because at least two members of the coaching staff raised concerns about Stallion's scheme. Wait a minute. I thought that no coaches knew. The NCAA says, okay, that's fine, but they didn't bring it to compliance. You need to bring it to compliance. Even I know that, and I don't work in college football. I just talk about it for fun. But who are the coaches that knew? Mr. Big Bro himself, Mike Hart, the man who forever coined Michigan State his little brother, and I know Sparty's getting a kick out of this. So in September 23, a Rutgers staff member told Mike Hart Michigan was stealing signals and going further than most do. Mike Hart then brought it to defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. The Rutgers staffer mentioned Stallions specifically. So Mike Hart knew, Jesse Minter knew, and Michael Neiman, a low-level Michigan staffer, raised concerns about Stallion's sign stealing system and refused to be a part of it when Stallions wanted him to rent a car, go down to a Georgia game, and record for him there. And Neiman approached assistant coach Chris Partridge to inform him that he did not want to be part of Stallion's scheme. Chris Partridge then went to Stallions directly and said, "You're not using this kid in your signal organization, stupid thing. So just move him to a manager." Which means Partridge knew, Mike Hart knew, Jesse Minter knew. That's three coaches on the staff that we now know knew. And remember, this is Michigan themselves saying this. This is not an allegation. Three coaches they just admitted to knew. But I also don't know how that sounds to you. But the way Partridge words that, it sounds like everybody was annoyed by this little dweeb, man. That's really what it comes off to me. Chris Partridge, also the guy who got Connor Stalions into the program. Stalions admitted that in his documentary. The NCAA says about Chris Partridge, he violated a bylaw by pressuring an athlete to protect the football coaching staff by providing false or misleading information when answering questions. Partridge was terminated by the institution for disregarding the institution's directive to not discuss the investigation with anyone. Michigan said his failure to abide by the institution's directive does not constitute a violation of any NCAA bylaw. Michigan also refutes 3 of the 4 allegations that Stalions impeded the investigation, including that Stalions failed to preserve all pertinent information by 1, declining to produce his personal phone, 2, withholding and removing hard drives from his office, 3, putting relevant information into a backpack and instructing a staff member to take it to an unpaid student's intern's house where Stalions could pick it up, and 4, instructing a student intern to delete potentially relevant information. So they deny 1, 2, and 3, but they cop to 4. So what will the board say? How will this go? I don't know. I don't expect any details on that anytime soon. But here's where we're at with this. What do we know now? We know some of those text messages from Sharon Moore, and we know unequivocally that at least 3 of their coaches did know about it, which they have screamed forever that nobody knew but low-level staffers, yada, yada, yada. So there we have it. That's the latest update. Love to know what you guys think about it, and I'll talk to you soon. Juck on Bucks.